never even thought paralysis. It doesn't happen to us. He's never expected any sympathy. He's always known that he made the wrong decision to get on that bike under the influence.
What I would say to someone who thinks it's okay to drink and ride is, you think it's okay for your kids and wife not to ever see you again?
When I hit the ground and rolled, I had on my leather jacket. And when I received my leather jacket the next day, it was ripped and torn in shreds.
As the orthopedist had said that he had seen all the bones that I had broken. He'd seen them all broken before, but he said he'd never seen so many bones broken in one person at the same time.
My wife was thrown approximately 100 feet.
The next thing I remember is waking up on the ground, on the road, on all fours, screaming.
That the next day in the hospital, the attending nurse in my room asked me if I had a tattoo on my head. It turned out that the tattoo was a small bruise created by the edge of the helmet.
After I hit the deer, it just about busted her in half.
I didn't even know I was having an accident until I heard the helmet hit the ground, and it looked like the side of the helmet was just smashed in, like somebody had smashed it on a rock.
We're both first day of our 2-week vacation, minding our own business, driving on a public highway, and then to have somebody not see us because their attention isn't where it should be, caused us a lot of pain,
My car hit him head on and just kept on going, you know, and as far as he or his family was concerned, I left him to die.
My helmet got ripped off my head and ended up inside the car. I'm just damn lucky I didn't take my head with it.
We were all on our motorcycles. We made one more stop and had a couple of more beers, and actually my choice was to do a couple of shots also, which unfortunately on my way home there was a car that came down a hill and did not negotiate to stop. I went to accelerate to get in front of the vehicle because at that point in time I knew he wasn't going to make the stop. He was going to roll it, and he came right into my lane. And I had to take the ditch. I started back up towards the road, and my foot peg on my motorcycle hit the gravel and shot me back down into the ditch. What happened next was there was a culvert that was approaching me quite quickly. It was dark, so I really didn't know it was there. My motorcycle hit the culvert, launching me 37 feet into the air. As the bike started to come down, I hit on the front tire, which catapulted me forward and off of the motorcycle. And I struck one of the local businesses there. I hit their sign and shattered my T11 vertebrae, instantaneously paralyzing myself from the waist down. My therapist is, speculating that it could take up to 2 years before I really get fully recovered from my incident. Because of my drinking, this is the end result. And this is something that I'll have to live with for the rest of my life, and my family also.
But there's still no promises with that he'll walk. They don't say, yes, you will. They don't say, no, you won't. We're young. Our children are grown. We have 2 grandchildren that truly love their grandpa and don't understand why he can't get on the floor with them to color. Our life was just beginning, so to speak. Our life together, just the 2 of us. No children, no worries, no financial burdens. I can't even begin to tell you the financial stress that it's put on us.
My suggestion to all riders is please don't drink and drive that motorcycle. It's just, you're not always the one that's responsible for what happens. In my case, is a specific example of that. If that person wouldn't have been there, if.
Me and a bunch of buddies always met up on a Sunday to go for rides on our bikes. And one of our friends that were with us, Homer, went out the night before. And when he did show up, he seemed to be a little different than normal for his riding and things like that. and he continued to drink throughout the day. I mentioned it to him a few times, and he neglected to listen to me. It was a very windy day, beautiful for springtime in Wisconsin. We left the last establishment we were at, and he decided to go ahead of us, and it was so windy and I wasn't going to keep up with him, and come up over the hill, and there his bike was and his body was laying. So it was only seconds after the accident, and I ran up to him. He was breathing. By the time the police officers got there, the helicopter was already en route. He came to, and we talked for just a little bit. They got him stabilized to fly in the helicopter, and he died on the way to the hospital. What happened to Homer was he had too much to drink, obviously. His reaction time was very slow, so when he come up on the conversion from 2-lane to single lane, it was a quick turn to the left, and he did miss it. His bike slid 100 feet into the barricades, and his body actually was stopped by a barricade. And it's a simple, easy maneuver. I mean, when your reaction time is slow, I mean, you're just asking for it. I guess the biggest lesson is that not to be selfish, because you might just think you're only hurting yourself, but I live with that guilt every time I throw my leg over a motorcycle that I could have done something. You can make the first choice just by not drinking on a motorcycle. There's no reason to take something that's so free and so fun and so awesome to do and to ruin it by having a drink. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I was riding a motorcycle going to my parents' house, and I was stopped at a stop sign, and I noticed a van coming behind me at top speed. I tried to put my bike in gear. I couldn't move fast enough. The guy slammed into me and threw me off my bike. My bike went one way, I went another direction, and landed in the incoming traffic. If I wouldn't have had on my helmet or my leather gloves and protective gear, I would have much more substantial damage. The guy didn't even realize he had hit anybody. When I got injured, I couldn't walk, so the doctors didn't know that my back was messed up or my hip was cracked. So by the time they got to it, arthritis had already set in, and there's nothing else they can do about it. Well, what I would say to a new motorcyclist is be cautious of all surroundings. The bike is really not dangerous. It's the people around you and the decisions that you make while riding it. I recommend at all times you wear your helmet. Whether if you're going around the corner to the corner store or you're getting on the highway to go for a long distance, you should always wear your helmet, because you never know when something might happen.
I was approaching a corner, probably 35 miles an hour or so, and it was a wet, damp pavement. The front end of the bike washed out, and falling, in watching where I was going at the same time, trying to make sure, this is one of the important things, is to not freeze when something happens. You have to remember to keep thinking. And there was traffic coming at me. I managed to push away from the bike before it hit the first car. I got out of the way of the second car, and then I laid on my back and watched the van drive over the top of me. The front wheels drove over my pelvis, and the rear wheels drove over my ankles. They looked at all the stuff and were totally amazed at the fact that I had a lot of broken bones, but I had absolutely no road rash. I had no other problems whatsoever because I've been wearing full leathers underneath my rain gear. I spent a year after that learning how to walk again. All the time in the hospital watching your family sitting in chairs wondering if you're going to make it or not going to make it. It takes a huge toll. Quite honestly, I don't know that I could do anything any differently than what I had. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't doing anything I wasn't supposed to. I was riding within my limits and the bike's limits, but there were some pavement irregularities and just enough stuff that it caught the front and it washed out, and it's just something that happens. It's real easy. If you ride a lot, sooner or later it's possible something could happen. Can't control everything, but you can control the way you dress and how you prepare for riding. We all like to go riding, so let's remove as many of the possible things that could happen. Putting on a helmet, wearing gloves and boots and a jacket, it's not a big deal. And even if you were to fall off going 15 miles an hour off your bike and you had a t-shirt and jeans on, you're going to get tore up. Well, if you fall down and get hurt and you have no protective gear on, you're not just hurting yourself, your family is going to be losing out on you. And until you've been through that, it's really hard to understand subjecting them to your choices to not be protected properly.
My wife and I were returning from a dinner ride that we had every Thursday night. And we were actually traveling over the interstate. And there was a car that was exiting the interstate on an exit ramp. And I actually saw the headlights, and I'm very conscious and was watching to make sure that she stopped. And she did, but then she proceeded to pull out. And we were, like I say, we were going about 50 miles an hour, and I locked up my brakes, unfortunately, and impacted her at about her front driver's side tire. And both my wife and I were ejected from the motorcycle. I landed just on the other side of the car. My wife was thrown approximately 100 feet.
The next thing I remember is waking up on the ground, on the road, on all fours, screaming, and I couldn't find him, which was very scary. We were kind of on a hill and I could see cars coming. I didn't know if he was in the middle of the road.
Her helmet practically cracked in half, and it literally saved her life. Be very aware of your surroundings and the traffic. Even though we knew that this woman had stopped, she continued to move on. And because it was at night, we didn't have that eye contact that a lot of the instructors do teach you, to have eye contact with that other person. All I remember doing was screaming, "Hold on."
I can't remember anything after he said, "Hang on." They said if I didn't have my helmet on, I probably wouldn't be here. It just the way I landed was on my head, which my head went down into my shoulders, and I have a lot of neck and back injury now because of that.
At the time of the accident, I wasn't 100% a helmet wearer. And we were just lucky enough that that night we did have our helmets on. And today, my wife and I ride with helmets all the time.
I would say 100% they need to put the helmets on. Doesn't matter if your hair goes flat or what, put it on.
On my way home, I was involved in a motor vehicle accident. I was on my motorcycle. A lady who was having a very bad day ran a stop sign, hitting me and my motorcycle. I was probably going about 30 miles an hour at the time, and she completely avoided or did not stop at a stop sign. If she had been more attentive to what she was doing and driving the car, the accident probably would have been prevented. I've gone back to the accident scene a couple times, and maybe I could have done a little better with some searching. Search, evaluate, and execute is a driving safety method. And search stands for looking for hazards in the road, things that could cause an accident or could harm us. Evaluate is just a method of mentally evaluating how much risk they really pose to us. And execute means that we would avoid that hazard by slowing down, speeding up, swerving around them. Maybe my search could have been a little bit better. Maybe knowing that it's a dangerous intersection, maybe I could have been going a little bit slower. My motorcycle was pretty well totaled, and I ended up with several injuries. I had broken ribs in my back and a cracked sternum. My head also impacted the car very hard. Luckily, I was wearing full motorcycle gear at the time, and my helmet was totally destroyed in the accident. But there are things I could have done, there's things she could have done, but thank God I was wearing all the protective gear.
I got about 3 miles from my house in New Richmond. And just over the brow of a hill down in the valley, there was this deer standing. For a moment, I maybe wasn't looking as I crested that knob, but so I had no time at all. I mean, when I saw her, it was way too late. Had I not had a full face helmet on, I'd have messed up my face bad because I hit basically on my face. If it was over 200 feet, I skidded down the road unconscious. Everything playing out as it did, I was so fortunate to have always, worn all my protective gear. Like I said, the helmet saved my life. But I had the mesh jacket with the full body armor, and that thing is pretty tore up. It's really scraped a lot on the right-hand side. I had gloves on; those were tore up pretty good. But because of those, I really didn't lose any skin to speak of on my hands. Deer is a terrible problem in Wisconsin to motorists in general, but particularly to motorcyclists. I don't know if there's there's no trick or anything like that. A person just has to be very aware. But a helmet, bar none, is so important. It doesn't take much of a fall or an accident at all, and you're dead, or you're laying in a hospital somewhere, laying in a home somewhere.
A friend of mine and I were heading south, going to go get a sidecar put on his rig. So we're transitioning from the country road onto the freeway, and you've got those ram's horn type on-ramps, and the two of us are riding onto the ramp, and ahead of us is a big 10-ton dumper. And it's at an angle, obviously, trying to get on just like we are, and it's dumping gravel. And so we've got gravel hitting the road in front of us. My buddy swung farther left to get around it. I didn't have time. I hit the gravel. It's just like ball bearings. The front wheel goes, and you really don't know you're in trouble till you feel the bike slip, and then it's too late. The bike slipped. My highway peg dug into the pavement and pogoed. The bike went one way, and I just got slapped on the pavement. I didn't even know I was having an accident until I heard the helmet hit the ground, and it looked like the side of the helmet was just smashed in, like somebody had smashed it on a rock. And that saved my life. If I hadn't had the helmet on, I wouldn't be here today. You constantly have to be alert. You can't slack off. You've got to be looking at the road, and you have to be looking ahead and considering what's coming up. You start to daydream. It doesn't take much to miss. Could be a board or a piece of metal that fell off of another truck. Somebody dropped a muffler or something. So you have to constantly be aware of the possibilities of what's going on out there and be ready for it.
Basically, we were northbound on a 4-lane divided highway. We were coming by an exit, and we noticed a car coming down the ramp. My wife was on her bike in front of me about, maybe 50 yards, and I was behind her, and then there was 2 cars behind us. All of us got over into the left lane to allow that vehicle to come down onto the interstate. Once that vehicle got down on the interstate and was almost parallel with my wife, it all of a sudden made a left-hand turn, trying to go through one of these maintenance turnaround points. My wife didn't have a chance to hardly react at all. The car struck my wife's motorcycle, knocking her off the motorcycle. I tried braking. I knew I was going to hit the vehicle, so then I got off the brakes and went to swerving, and still was unable to get around that vehicle. It happened so fast. I went down, skidding down the interstate at about 60 miles an hour. And at the time, I guess my only thought was I just watched my wife get knocked off her bike by this car. After coming to a stop and assessing that I didn't have any serious injuries, I jumped up, ran over to where she was, took my helmet off, and proceeded to give her first aid. She was in a ditch in a medium, unconscious. And the first time I looked at the car and the driver, they were both standing there with cell phones in their hands. And to me, I think they were probably talking on the cell phone and just not paying attention. And the whole thing could have been prevented had they been driving instead of telephoning or texting or whatever they were doing.
A couple of my buddies who had motorcycles had called me up because I just got my new motorcycle. I had my permit. I was just starting to ride, just learning how to ride, and it was a beautiful day. 80, 85 degrees, no wind, sunny. Just a beautiful day to ride.
I had some mixed drinks, some vodkas, Bloody Marys, and then I had some more beers.
On my way home, I was probably 5 miles from my house, and I was hit head-on by a drunk driver who fled the scene.
Came to, and I was in the middle of a field, and I didn't know what was going on. It was like I could see cop lights in the background, and I was drunk, so I didn't want to have anything to do with the cops. So obviously, I ran the other way.
Then I must have flew over the handlebars. Obviously, I went into the windshield, head first. I'm assuming.
When the victim hit my car, his head flew through my window and actually ripped off his helmet, and the helmet laid in my front seat, and he went flipping over the car, and I'm almost sure that they decided that his feet went through the back window and he hit the ground.
I don't remember the accident at all, but he must have come over across the center line a couple times, because I had like a 20-foot skid mark from me locking up the brakes, and then there's like a patch of like 125 feet of just straight skid marks, probably from where he hit me.
And then I seen a helicopter, and I was like, okay, what did I do that they would have a helicopter looking for me? So I laid down in the grass.
I was airlifted from the scene. I had to get somewhere between like 10 and 15 units of blood the first night, 8 to 12 hours of surgery. My left leg was the worst. I didn't have any shin bone from like, I don't know, 6 inches below my knee to like 3 inches above my ankle.
When they told me, honestly, I didn't want to live anymore. And I was in the jail cell, and I told them that.
It's not an accident. It's a choice. It's a choice you make. And the choices you should make is to not drink and drive at all.
It really opened my eyes to the fact that I had a problem drinking, but this really gave me the desire to quit because of how bad I had injured someone, and I never really understood the dangers behind drinking and driving.
I got to talk to Mr. Lunn when he got sentenced right before he went to prison, and first thing he said to me when I walked in the room was, "I wish it was me on that motorcycle instead of you." And he had tears coming down his face. And I said, "There's two things in this world me and you got to deal with." I said, "I don't have a leg, and you're going to prison."
I don't want other people to make the same mistake that I did, because the guilt and all the feelings that come along with it are so deep and such a burden to carry around.
I'm going to ride again, and I will be safe again. I'll never ride without a helmet. Never, ever, ever. Zero in Wisconsin.
0 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 in Wisconsin.
A vision we can all live with.
A vision we can all live with.